The starship Verity glided quietly through the blue and gold clouds of Lizara, a planet hidden from human eyes for thousands of years. For Ethan Rivers, Earth's young diplomat, everything felt new. The stars looked brighter, the colors more alive. He stood at the viewport, his reflection showing wide eyes full of wonder and nerves. Ethan's mission was simple: represent humanity in the first meeting with the Lizaran royal family. But nothing about Lizara felt simple. He had read reports about Lizara's beautiful cities and their ancient traditions. The people here were not only different, they were legendary. Their technology was graceful and strange, their art full of colors Earth had never seen. As the shuttle landed, Ethan smoothed his jacket and checked his translator earpiece. Around him, his team whispered encouragements. The Lizarans waited outside, tall and elegant, their skin shimmering in the sunlight with patterns that changed like the ocean. At the front stood Princess Cerilyn. She wore a gown of living petals and looked as calm as moonlight, though her eyes seemed sad and curious. When Ethan stepped forward, Cerilyn took a step closer. The crowd of Lizaran officials and Earth crew fell silent. Ethan remembered his training. He bowed his head, keeping his hands at his sides. On Earth, he might have offered a handshake, but his advisors warned him. Lizaran customs around touch were strict, especially with the royal family. "Welcome, Ethan Rivers," Cerilyn said, her voice soft but clear. The translator repeated her words in Ethan's ear. "We are honored to meet the children of Earth." Ethan smiled, trying to hide his nerves. "Thank you, Princess Cerilyn. I am honored to meet you too. Earth has dreamed of this day." A small smile touched Cerilyn's lips, but her eyes grew sadder for a moment. She looked at Ethan's hands, then away. Ethan wondered if she expected a different greeting. He almost raised his hand, but remembered the warnings. Never touch the princess. Never break the old rules. As they walked together through Lizara's gardens, Ethan noticed the beauty all around. Flowers that glowed with soft light, trees that sang gentle music when the wind blew. The palace itself seemed to float on air. Cerilyn pointed out her favorite flower, its petals moving as if listening. "I have many questions about humans," she said. "We read your messages, watched your art, heard your music. Humans touch each other often, yes?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, touch is important to us. It means friendship, comfort. Sometimes it's just a way to say hello." Cerilyn seemed thoughtful. "Here, it is forbidden to touch the royal family. It is our oldest law." Ethan sensed a deep loneliness in her voice, and he felt a sudden wish to break the rule, to offer her the simple comfort of a handshake or a friendly pat on the shoulder. But he didn't. The ancient traditions held him back. As the sun set behind the palace, Ethan wondered what secrets Lizara's laws were hiding, and why the princess sounded so sad when she spoke of touch. Little did he know, this simple rule would change both their worlds forever. The next morning, sunlight poured into Ethan's guest room inside the Lizaran palace. Everything felt unreal. The bed was soft as clouds, the walls shone with moving colors, and somewhere in the garden, birds sang songs that sounded almost like words. Ethan barely had time to finish his tea when a Lizaran attendant appeared at his door. "Princess Cerilyn invites you for breakfast in her private garden," the attendant said, bowing slightly. Ethan nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. He quickly dressed and followed the attendant down winding halls. The palace was full of gentle music and sweet scents, but every guard they passed watched Ethan carefully, their faces calm but their eyes sharp. In the garden, Cerilyn waited beside a table covered in fruits and breads. She smiled when she saw Ethan. "Please, join me," she said. Her voice was warm, but her eyes still held a shadow of sadness. Ethan sat across from her, and for a few moments they ate in silence, listening to the soft hum of the garden. Finally, Cerilyn spoke. "On your world, do you eat together with friends?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "Yes, sharing food is special for us. It's a way to become closer." Saralyn looked pleased. It is the same for us. But still, we keep our distance. She gestured to the space between them. Ethan noticed the table was just a bit wider than normal. Another way to avoid any accidental touch. After breakfast, Saralyn led Ethan through a path of glowing flowers. She showed him a fountain where the water rose and fell in the shape of dancing figures. "Ethan," she said softly, "may I ask something personal?" "Of course," he replied. She hesitated, looking at her hands. "Are humans ever afraid to touch each other?" Ethan smiled gently. "Sometimes, yes, if someone is angry or scared, but usually, touch helps us feel safe." Saralyn seemed to think about this for a long moment. Then she stopped walking and looked up at the sky. "I wish we could touch, but our laws are old and strict. My advisors say it is dangerous." Ethan remembered the warnings from his own advisors. Never try to shake hands, never reach out, even by accident. Last night, a Lysaran official had visited him in secret, telling him old stories. "No outsider must touch the royal family," the official said. "Long ago, it brought sickness. Now, it is forbidden forever." Ethan wondered if these stories were true or just old fears passed down through time. He saw how lonely Saralyn looked and wished there was something he could do. Before he could speak, a loud bell rang out from the palace. Saralyn's gentle mood changed, her face growing serious. "My advisors have called me," she said. "Please, enjoy the gardens. But remember, some here do not trust outsiders." She left, her steps light, but her head bowed. Ethan stood alone among the singing flowers, the weight of Lysara's rules pressing on him. He decided that, somehow, he would learn the truth about the law that kept Saralyn. And maybe all of Lysara. So alone, Ethan spent the rest of the day exploring the palace gardens, but his mind kept going back to Saralyn's sad eyes and her question about touch. The flowers around him glowed with gentle colors, and the air was full of sweet scents, but Ethan felt a kind of emptiness in the beauty. He could feel the invisible wall between him and the people of Lysara, a wall built by fear and old traditions. Later that afternoon, Ethan joined a group of Lysaran scholars in the palace library. The library was enormous, with walls made of crystal and books that floated gently in the air. The Lysaran scholars were friendly but distant, always careful to keep space between themselves and Ethan. They discussed science, art, and the history of Lysara, but nobody talked about the royal family's ancient law. When the discussion ended, Ethan wandered into a quiet corner of the library. There he found a painting of a past Lysaran king and queen, surrounded by people, everyone standing apart. Not one hand touched another. Even in art, the law was clear. Ethan felt frustrated. On Earth, people showed care and kindness through touch. A handshake, a pat on the back, a hug. Here, everything felt lonely, even in a crowd. As evening fell, Ethan returned to his room. He stood on his balcony, looking over the glowing city below. The sky was full of 2 moons and floating lights. Suddenly, there was a soft knock at his door. It was Saralyn. She stood at the doorway, her hands folded. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," she said quietly. "Not at all," Ethan replied, stepping aside to let her in. Saralyn walked to the balcony and gazed at the city lights. For a moment, they stood in silence. "Do you ever feel lonely here?" Ethan asked gently. Saralyn nodded. "Sometimes I feel like I live in a glass shell. Everyone can see me, but no one can reach me. My own people are afraid to come close." She looked at Ethan, her eyes searching his face. "When I was a child, I tried to hold my mother's hand. She pulled away, afraid. That memory never left me." Ethan's heart ached for her. "I'm sorry, Saralyn. On Earth, we don't have such rules. We believe that kindness and trust are shown by being close." Saralyn smiled sadly. "I envy that. I wish things were different here." There was a pause. Outside, a soft wind played with the balcony curtains. Saralyn stepped back as if remembering she had already stayed too long. "My advisors will worry if I am here too long," she whispered. "Thank you for listening, Ethan. You are different from others I have met. You care." As she left, Ethan realized something important. The real barrier between their worlds was not space or technology. It was fear, old and heavy as stone. And maybe, just maybe, Ethan could help change that. He promised himself he would try, no matter what the cost. The next morning, Ethan woke up with a new sense of purpose. He had seen Cyrilyn's sadness, and he could not forget it. As he dressed, he thought about the strange law that kept everyone apart. Was the curse real, or was it just an old story? He wanted to know the truth. After breakfast, Ethan found Cyrilyn waiting for him by a stone path that led deeper into the palace gardens. She smiled softly when she saw him, though her eyes were still shadowed by worry. "Would you like to walk with me?" she asked. Ethan agreed, and together they strolled among the glowing trees and singing flowers. For a while, they talked about simple things: music, childhood memories, and their favorite foods. But Ethan could see that Cyrilyn was restless. She kept looking over her shoulder, as if afraid someone might hear them. Finally, when they reached a quiet, hidden part of the garden, Cyrilyn stopped. "Ethan," she began, "I want to tell you something, but you must promise not to tell anyone else." Ethan nodded. "I promise." Cyrilyn took a deep breath. "The law about touching the royal family. It is more than just a rule. My ancestors believed there was a curse. The story says that if someone from outside the royal bloodline touches us, something terrible will happen. They say it will bring sickness or disaster. That is why everyone is so afraid." Ethan listened carefully. "But do you believe it?" Cyrilyn hesitated. "I used to. But now, I am not sure. I have read old books in secret, and some stories say the curse is just a legend, made to protect the royal family from danger. Some say it was made to keep us apart, to keep the royal bloodline pure and untouched by outsiders." Ethan felt a spark of hope. If it's just a story, maybe it's time to change things. Cyrilyn looked away. "It is not easy. Many people here believe in the old ways. My advisors say the law keeps peace and order. They say if it is broken, it could bring chaos. But are you happy?" Ethan asked gently. Cyrilyn shook her head. "No, I feel trapped. I want to know what it is like to be close to someone, to feel a friend's hand or a parent's hug. Sometimes I dream about a world where I am free." Ethan reached out, stopping just short of her hand. He wanted to comfort her but did not want to break his promise or put her in danger. "I want to help you, Cyrilyn," he said quietly. "Maybe together we can find out the truth about this curse." Cyrilyn smiled, hope lighting her face for the first time. "Thank you, Ethan. You are braver than you know." Hidden by the garden's tall flowers, they made a silent agreement. From that moment, they would search for the truth, no matter how difficult or dangerous it might be. Ethan knew this journey would not be easy, but he also knew that some walls needed to be broken and some stories needed to end, so new ones could begin. That night, Ethan could not sleep. The promise he made to Cyrilyn filled his mind. He wanted to help her, and maybe help all of Lizara. He knew the answer was hidden somewhere in the palace, maybe in a place where few people dared to go. Early in the morning, Cyrilyn sent him a quiet message through a small glowing bird. "Meet me near the East Tower when the sun rises," it whispered in her voice. Ethan dressed quickly and slipped through the palace halls, careful not to wake the guards. The East Tower was old and covered in vines. Cyrilyn waited for him, wearing a plain cloak instead of her royal gown. She looked more nervous than before. "Are you ready?" she whispered. Ethan nodded. "Where are we going?" Cyrilyn glanced around to make sure no one was watching. "To the secret archives. They are under the palace. Only a few people know about them. If the truth is anywhere, it will be there." They moved quickly, staying in the shadows. Cyrilyn led Ethan to a hidden door behind a wall of old tapestries. She pressed her hand against a certain spot, and the door slid open without a sound. Inside, narrow stairs twisted down into darkness. Ethan followed Cerilyn, his heart beating fast. The air felt cold, and the walls were lined with carvings of old kings and queens, all standing alone. At the bottom, they found a dusty room filled with old scrolls, books, and crystal memory spheres. Everything was covered in layers of time. Cerilyn searched the shelves while Ethan helped, reading what he could with the help of his translator. They found stories from centuries ago. Many of them spoke of the royal family and the curse of the outsider's touch. But the older the stories got, the less they mentioned any real sickness or disaster. In the oldest scroll, Ethan found something strange, a diary written by a royal advisor. He read it out loud. Today, the king ordered that no one outside the royal bloodline should touch his family. He says it is to protect them from the jealousy of others. The people will fear the curse, but it is only a tale. It keeps the family safe and apart. Cerilyn's eyes grew wide. So it really was just a story, a way to control people and keep us apart from everyone else. Ethan felt a mixture of relief and anger. All these years, Cerilyn and all Lizarans had suffered from a rule built on fear, not fact. Suddenly, they heard footsteps above. Someone else was coming down the stairs. "We must go," Cerilyn whispered. She grabbed a few old scrolls and hid them under her cloak. They hurried back through the hidden door, closing it just as the footsteps reached the bottom. Safe in the shadowed hallway, Ethan and Cerilyn looked at each other with hope and fear in their eyes. They now held the secret that could change everything. But they also knew that breaking old traditions could be dangerous. As they slipped away into the morning light, Ethan promised himself he would stand with Cerilyn, no matter what happened next. The sun had barely risen when Ethan returned to his room, clutching the old scrolls Cerilyn had hidden beneath her cloak. His heart pounded with excitement, but also with fear. The secret archives had revealed something incredible. The curse was just a story made to keep the royal family apart from their people. But not everyone would want that truth to come out. Later that day, as Ethan met with Cerilyn in a quiet hallway, the air felt heavier than before. Cerilyn's face was pale, her eyes dark with worry. "They found out," she whispered. "My advisors know we went to the archives." Ethan's stomach tightened. What will they do? Cerilyn shook her head. "They will try to stop us, to keep the old ways safe." Before Ethan could answer, footsteps echoed down the hall. A group of stern-faced Lizaran officials appeared, their robes decorated with silver patterns. At their head was Lord Keldar, Cerilyn's chief advisor, a man known for his strict loyalty to tradition. "You have broken the law," Keldar said coldly, pointing at Ethan. "Trespassing in the secret archives is a crime against the royal family." Cerilyn stepped forward, her voice steady but firm. "We only sought the truth." Keldar sneered. "Truth? There is no truth to challenge our laws. The curse protects us all. Anyone who disrespects it threatens Lizaret itself." Ethan looked at Cerilyn. She was calm, but he could see the fear beneath her strength. He took a breath and spoke clearly. "Lord Keldar, the scrolls show that the curse is a legend. The real reason for the law was to keep the royal family separate. The people deserve to know the truth." Keldar's eyes flashed with anger. "You are an outsider. You do not understand our ways. You endanger us all." Suddenly, the officials moved to separate Ethan and Cerilyn. One grabbed Ethan's arm, but Cerilyn raised her hand, and they paused, unsure how to act against the princess. "We will decide your punishment," Keldar said. "Until then, you are not to see each other." Cerilyn was led away by guards, and Ethan was taken to a small bare room. The walls seemed to close in around him. He sat on the floor, feeling the weight of the palace's cold silence. But even as the walls closed in, Ethan refused to give up. Later that evening, a small light appeared under his door. A note slid inside, written in delicate Lizaran script. Meet me in the East Garden at midnight. I will bring a key. Trust no one." Ethan's heart leaped. Cerilyn was risking everything to keep their plan alive. When the clock struck midnight, Ethan slipped from his room, moving quietly through shadowed halls to the East Garden. There, hidden among tall glowing flowers, stood Cerilyn, holding a small silver key. "We cannot trust anyone else," she whispered. "The palace is full of enemies. But if we want to change Lizara, we must be careful and brave." Ethan nodded, feeling the strength of their secret bond. Together, they faced a future full of danger and hope. The palace was quiet as Ethan and Cerilyn met in the East Garden under the light of the twin moons. The glowing flowers made soft shadows on their faces. Cerilyn held the small silver key tightly, her eyes full of determination. "We must show the people that the curse is not real," Cerilyn said softly. "But how can we do this? They will not listen to words alone." Ethan thought for a moment. "We need to prove it. We need a moment where the people can see that nothing bad happens if the law is broken." Cerilyn nodded slowly. "A public ceremony. A way to break the old fear." Ethan smiled. "On Earth, we have a tradition where two leaders join hands in front of their people. It shows trust and unity." Cerilyn's eyes shone. "That could work, but it will be dangerous. My advisors will try to stop us." "We must be ready," Ethan said. "We cannot wait for permission. Change only happens when someone is brave enough to begin." Over the next days, Ethan and Cerilyn worked in secret. They gathered friends who believed in their cause, young Lizarans tired of old fears and rules. Together, they planned the ceremony. It would be held in the palace's great hall, where everyone could see. On the morning of the ceremony, the palace buzzed with tension. Guards patrolled the halls, and whispers filled the air. Ethan dressed in his formal clothes, while Cerilyn chose a simple gown, one that showed she was not just a princess but a person. The great hall filled slowly with Lizaran nobles, advisors, and curious citizens. Many looked angry or worried. Ethan could feel their eyes, full of doubt. Cerilyn stepped forward. "Today," she began, "we face a fear that has held us apart for too long." She looked at Ethan, then reached out her hand. Ethan took it without hesitation. A hush fell over the crowd. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Cerilyn smiled, a real smile, full of hope and courage. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "There is no curse," he said. "Only stories made long ago. We are here to build a new future." Slowly, a few people stepped forward, their faces changing from fear to wonder. One noble touched Cerilyn's shoulder lightly. Another took her hand in friendship. The old walls of fear began to crumble, but not everyone was happy. From the shadows, Lord Keldar watched, his face dark with anger. He whispered to his followers, planning how to stop this change. After the ceremony, Cerilyn and Ethan knew their fight was just beginning. But for the first time, they saw the spark of hope growing in Lizara's heart. Together, they would face whatever came next. The great hall was still buzzing with whispers when Ethan and Cerilyn stepped down from the stage. The ceremony had been a bold move, breaking centuries of fear with one simple touch. But the real test was just beginning. Outside the hall, crowds had gathered in the palace courtyard. Word spread quickly that the princess and the human had dared to touch. Many Lizarans came to see for themselves what would happen. Cerilyn stood beside Ethan, her hand still holding his. Her heart raced with a mix of hope and fear. Would the people accept this new way, or would old fears tear them apart? A group of children approached first, curious and wide-eyed. One brave child reached out and gently touched Cerilyn's hand. She smiled and knelt to meet the child's eyes. "It's okay," she whispered. "There is nothing to fear." More Lizarans followed. Some older citizens looked uncertain, but the younger ones moved closer, their faces lighting up with relief. Ethan watched, amazed. The power of touch was simple, but its meaning was profound. It was a symbol of trust, friendship, and hope. Suddenly, a shout broke through the crowd. Lord Keldar, Saralin's chief advisor, appeared, his face stern and angry. "This is madness," he cried. "You risk everything for a lie. The curse is real, and you threaten our world's safety." Saralin stepped forward, her voice strong. "The curse was never real. It was a story to keep us apart. We must move forward together." Keldar's followers murmured angrily. Some stepped back, but others raised their voices in protest. Tension filled the air. Ethan knew that words alone would not end the fight. He looked at Saralin and nodded. "Then let us show them," he said. He turned to the crowd. "Look at us. Nothing is wrong. We are not afraid. This is a new dawn for Lysara and Earth." Slowly, more Lysarans reached out to touch one another. Hands met hands, breaking the invisible chains of fear. The courtyard filled with smiles and laughter. A new energy stirred in the air. For the first time in generations, Lysarans and humans stood united by more than words. They were connected by touch. But in the shadows, Lord Keldar watched, his eyes cold with hatred. He knew the battle was far from over. Saralin squeezed Ethan's hand. "We have made history today," she said softly. Ethan smiled. "And we will protect it. Together." As the sun set behind the twin moons, the palace glowed with a new light, a light of hope, courage, and a future where fear no longer ruled. After the ceremony, Lysara felt different. The air seemed lighter, and a quiet excitement spread through the city. People talked about the princess and the human who had dared to break the ancient rule. Some were hopeful, others worried. But change had begun. Saralin walked through the palace halls with a new confidence. For the first time, people smiled at her warmly. They reached out, not just with words, but with hands and gentle touches. It was strange and wonderful all at once. Ethan stayed close by her side. Together, they met with citizens, scholars, and even some cautious nobles. Each encounter helped build trust and understanding. The royal family's old isolation was slowly melting away. But not everyone was happy. Lord Keldar and his followers worked hard to spread fear and doubt. They told stories of disaster and warned that breaking the law would bring ruin. Some people listened and grew afraid again. One evening, as the twin moons rose high, Saralin called Ethan to the palace balcony. Below, a crowd gathered, waiting to hear her speak. "We have come far," she said, her voice strong and clear. "But the journey is not over. Fear is a chain that holds us back. We must break it together." She paused, looking at the faces below, some hopeful, some hesitant. "Touch is a gift," she continued. "It shows trust, love, and friendship. It connects us all. Today, I ask every Lysaran to open their hearts, to reach out and embrace one another." The crowd cheered, but a few voices called out in protest. Suddenly, a shout rang from the shadows. It was Lord Keldar. "You are playing with danger, princess. The old ways are for a reason." Saralin faced him calmly. "The old ways kept us apart and lonely. It is time to build a new future." Ethan stepped forward. "We stand with the princess. Together, humans and Lysarans can be stronger." Keldar's face twisted with anger, but he saw the growing support for Saralin. Slowly, he and his followers began to lose power. In the following weeks, more Lysarans dared to touch each other openly. Families reunited, friends comforted one another, and new friendships formed between Lysarans and humans. Saralin and Ethan worked tirelessly, building bridges between their worlds. They shared stories, music, and laughter. The palace became a place of warmth and light. One day, as they walked through the palace gardens, Saralin stopped and looked at Ethan. "Thank you," she said softly, "for helping me find courage, for helping Lysara find hope." Ethan smiled. "We helped each other. This is just the beginning." Together, they watched the sun set behind the twin moons. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, it was full of promise. Princess Solara looked out the window of her royal chamber as the world she knew burned in chaos. She was the only daughter of Emperor Talon, ruler of the mighty Thalorian Empire. But tonight, her home was not safe. The palace halls echoed with gunfire and screams. The golden banners of her family were falling, replaced by the cruel symbols of the rebels. Solara's heart pounded in her chest. She was scared, but she did not cry. She remembered her father's words. A true leader stands tall, even when she is afraid. The princess hurried down the secret passage behind her room. Only she and her father knew about it. The walls were cold, and every step she took echoed loudly in the silence. Outside, the city lights flickered as explosions rocked the capital. The sky was dark, filled with smoke and the sharp lights of energy weapons. Solara covered her face with a scarf and kept moving. She had to reach her ship in the hidden hangar. She could not trust anyone, not even her closest guards. The rebels had spies everywhere. Solara slipped through the shadows, heart racing. In the hangar, her small ship waited, shining silver under the emergency lights. As she climbed in, her hands trembled. The princess took a deep breath and started the engines. The ship roared to life, and she shot into the night sky, away from her burning home. But her escape was not easy. As soon as she left the planet's atmosphere, rebel ships spotted her. They fired warning shots, trying to force her back. Solara gripped the controls tightly, dodging blasts and pushing her ship to its limits. Alarms rang out as the ship shook under enemy fire. She punched in random coordinates for her hyperspace jump. She did not know where she was going, only that she had to survive. The ship leaped into hyperspace, but something was wrong. Sparks flew from the control panel. The navigation system was damaged. Solara struggled to keep the ship steady as it tumbled through space. "Come on, hold together," she whispered, but the ship did not listen. It broke out of hyperspace near an unknown planet. The ship was falling, spinning out of control. Solara tried to slow the crash, but the engines were dead. The last thing she saw before blacking out was the planet's surface rushing toward her. When Solara opened her eyes, she was lying on the cold metal floor of her broken ship. Through the shattered window, she saw a strange, wild landscape, a place unlike any she had seen before. Her head ached, but she knew one thing. She had to get out. She was alone, far from home, on a planet full of unknown dangers. The princess gathered her courage. She checked her supplies, took a deep breath, and stepped outside. The adventure was just beginning, and Solara had no idea what waited for her out there.